All right, we are live. Happy Wednesday, Facebook world.
Yeah.
Chelsea here with Rock Recovery Fitness. Hope everybody's off to a good start today, even though it's kind of dreary and rainy out here, but that's all right. We can make it a good day, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I am super stoked today to have two awesome recovery warriors with me today. I have Kyle Ruggeri, who's a good friend of mine and the sober dog. And I
Yeah.
Sean Cuddihy here with me today, who is the founder of his podcast, Room 9 Podcast. So I'm super stoked to have the both of them here, and I want to have them both get into a little bit talking about what it is that they do, but more so how they kind of got into it. And we're going to hear a little bit of their journeys today. So I hope that you are all able to tune in right now. And if you missed the video, that's okay. It saves and you can all go back and watch it later. We'll also blast it on the Sober Dogs page and get it on Room 9 Podcast social media as well. So really get the word out there today. But again, I'm just super stoked to have some true recovery warriors here today who have really just, transformed, not only their pasts, by entering their own recovery journeys, but really just taken this passion of wanting to get recovery out there and how they can help other people and really have more people heard, have their stories heard and really educate people on what it's like to be in the shoes of someone who struggles with, a substance use disorder and, all the things that go along with it. And both of these awesome guys with me today have really just, taken that and just kind of ran with it, and it's interesting to see them use different, virtual platforms, but, again, kind of really getting that recovery out there. So welcome, Kyle, and welcome, Sean. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Well, appreciate you having us on, Chelsea.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. I'm very happy and pumped to be here.
Absolutely. So I would love for you both to kind of briefly talk about what it is, those virtual platforms that you have created, the Sober Dogs website and the Room 9 podcast, and what that's kind of been like for where those ideas came from and how you got started a little bit with that.
Yeah, you can go first, Kyle.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, first of all, thank you. And Rock Recovery is freaking awesome. Awesome. Rock Recovery is like my favorite place. But anyway, we were just, kind of talking about before and I don't know, Sean, I'm not going to tell any of his story. I'm glad to meet him, but like our stories and how our stories are very powerful to feel alone and stuff. And so for me, it was, I went to prison and I got out of prison and I would see like friends or or their family at stores and stuff. And I'd go up to somebody's parents. How you doing? Oh, great. And they'd tell me about, oh, so-and-so's doing great. Just bought their first house, had their first kid. And they'd ask me how I'm doing. And I have no idea. I don't want to lie to them, but I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, just got out of prison a month ago and living at home with my family and struggling every day. I didn't want to lie. And I'm at this like crossroads of hiding my past and I really didn't know what to say. I'd say some real vague, generic response. And, a lot of people knew a little bit because unfortunately I got in some, decent trouble. So it was, in a couple local papers. But, and then the one day I just, part, to be honest, selfishly for my own recovery and then part to help others, I was like, you know what? I'm done hiding from the past. I'm going to put all my info out there, addiction, everything, the drug use, the drinking, high school, prison, all of it. And it helped me a ton to just stop carrying that burden. But then also, as soon as I started getting a message on Instagram or email or YouTube or whatever, hey, saw that part of your story. I could so relate. Hey, I'm going through this. It just gave me so much motivation to keep pushing. And from there out, it was like just a snowball effect of keep doing more and more. And, again, unfortunately, I got to say, to be selfish, it has helped me a ton because it just relieves this burden of like hiding pieces of my past and not knowing who to say what to, and just coming out with it. And like, I don't mean to be rude to people, but if you can't accept me for my past as an addict, then that's on you. I'm putting it out there. And I'd rather have the truth out there than kind of hide and play this, like, what do you know? What don't you know? Let me give vague answers game. So and then of course it helps so many other people. And that's the main goal is, people to just, relate and connect. So that's kind of how all mine started.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kyle.
Thank you.
I think you really hit it on the head. I feel like it's a weight off of your shoulders when you can say, you know what? It doesn't matter if somebody doesn't accept me for this. This is what I've struggled with. It's no different than the struggles that other people have gone through. And I think that's a great thing. And that kind of is a great leadway into, getting to what I'm starting to do. And I mean, spent some time in jail, went to short-term, long-term rehab. And, I struggled. I mean, really at 15, my brother and sister died. And that kind of pushed a lot of stuff in my life, really just suppressed it. And then I had a bad divorce and then I ended up really going down with addiction. But I knew kind of why I was in rehab, my long-term rehab, which my room number was room 9, that's where that comes from. And my roommate and we were just always talking about life and how can we better ourselves and what can we work on? And, how do you do this or how do you get over that? And I was like, one day, let's start a podcast. And so we actually made Horizon Village, which is in Sanborn, New York here, right about 45 minutes outside of Buffalo. We made our first 2 episodes were out on pass while we were still residents at the Horizon Village. So that was pretty cool to, be able to tell people, if you listen to the first 2 episodes, which the sound quality is absolutely terrible, but if you listen to them, we are actually still, residents in our long-term treatment facility. But I think it's all about really being able to share your story and, be able to find that courage. I think all 3 of us were talking about before we went live. It's just, it takes courage. And courage in the true essence of the word. I think a lot of people have seen that Brene Brown vulnerability talk where she, says the Latin root of, cur, which means to tell your story wholeheartedly. And that's what I always think of courage, because it does not take strength and bravery to repress your story, to repress your feelings and to not say anything about it. That's the easy way. And to find the courage and bravery to speak about it and speak up is tough. And I think that's a gift I want to pass on to a lot of people as well.
Yeah. It's amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's so very interesting. I think one of the things I love about meeting other people in recovery and hearing their stories is, oftentimes how different all of our stories look kind of surface level, but what's underneath that is so much of those same feelings that we all just truly struggle with. And it connects us on this, I don't know, it just connects us on this deeper level than any other connection I've had with other humans, and in my experience anyways. And Sean, I love that you touched on, having that courage. I love that Brene Brown podcast. And if you weren't going to bring it up, I totally was, because, just that idea where that comes from, that she talks, I'm actually reading her book right now, The Gifts of Imperfection. And it really talks about wholehearted living. And both of you actually, interestingly enough, exemplify so many of those guideposts that she talks about. And a lot of that is, the courage it takes to speak up and share our stories, and the vulnerability, that it really takes, and how difficult that can be. And, especially I notice I really appreciate the both of your, deep levels of vulnerability in sharing your stories, because this is a whole nother topic. But I know oftentimes for a lot of men, like, they don't feel comfortable showing that vulnerability. It's just the society that we've created today that men have to look this certain way, and they don't show that vulnerability, and it's so backwards. And I just really appreciate, when I can meet other, strong men who are willing to get those stories out there and say, hey, this is what I've been through. It was really tough, and this is where I'm at now. And you both also just show that resiliency too. And so it's very cool to see how you've taken, you've kind of been through the addiction part of your journeys, and you've kind of, practice the resiliency. And so now you're both at this other spot where you're wanting to turn it around and give back to what's been so freely given to you. And you both are doing that in a way of educating people about what addiction is and really getting other people's stories out there. So I'd love for you both to kind of talk a little bit about, what it is that Room 9 podcast kind of does and what it is that, is on the Sober Dogs website and how you've how have you been managing that? I mean, how did you both kind of really start into the work of that?
Well, I appreciate that. And that point you just brought up is so true. I still am awful at asking for help with anything, from when I'm struggling to I picked up a grill the other day, and instead of asking someone to help me lift it, I tried to put it in my own truck. It's just a stupid small example, but that's it. But slowly, it went, like what you said to the vulnerability. I always notice as soon as I bring up like a struggle or a flaw or an imperfection or something going on, a bad feeling with anybody, the conversation immediately gets so much deeper in a positive way. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, this person is not, acting superficial or like they're better than, and then other people immediately kind of put their guard down. And I think that's huge with recovery in general. That's been one of my main goals with, the website, social media, all that, is just, talking about a lot of the little areas where aren't necessarily talked about, within addiction, within recovery, within different things like that. I mentioned this before. My parents I lived with my parents for a vast majority of my addiction. They saw anything and everything, unfortunately. They have came in when they've heard me doing something like this or a video or something, said, wow, I had no idea when I'm talking about something going on during addiction, or like I did a weird article a while ago, 16 common items you didn't know drug addicts use. And my mom's looking through it like, I didn't know what that was when I saw it on your desk every day. I didn't know what that was. So it's like getting this info out there, and that kind of goes also back into the vulnerabilities, but people all of a sudden can relate and talk about it and put that guard down. I forgot, what's the second part of your question? Managing everything?
Yeah, because I know having known Kyle for a few years and his background, and also really reading a little bit about Sean in the past couple of days too, realizing the really cool thing is that neither one of you had like a big background in doing what you're doing now versus the podcast and the website and the social media. You didn't have a whole lot of experience though. So what's that kind of been like for you? Just kind of diving headfirst into this thing, saying, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Go. You want to go ahead, Sean? Answer this one first.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was, this is the positives out of being in rehab is all your responsibilities kind of just wipe away. All you have to really do is take care of you. And, I reminded myself of that constantly. So when you get out, I had nobody, my parents, my girlfriend, sister, they didn't expect me to jump right back into working full-time job, go back and work in a kitchen. And, that's a shady place to be working in anyway, when you're just fresh into recovery. But, so I had nothing. So I was like, all right, for some reason, I didn't pawn. The only thing I didn't pawn in my addiction was this little audio interface. You can plug 2 mics into it and hook it up to a computer and record. And so I borrowed 2 mics from my good buddy, and my sister gave me her old crappy laptop. And that's how I started doing it. And I had no idea how to, record audio. I just started figuring it out. And if you have the desire and the passion and the motivation to learn something, you can learn it. What's valuable now is time. If you have to make the time for it. That's what you pay people for. You pay a plumber. I could learn how to fix my plumbing, but I don't have the desire to do that. I'd rather just pay somebody for it. Right. And, so that's what you do. But I started, with no knowledge of recording audio. Now I'm into video production as well. I have my Friday, Saturday nights, like every other night, are, all right, let's get better at Premiere Pro or After Effects or, graphic design or whatever it is that I'm working on. And I mean, that's my life. I mean, really it is to, all right, how can I grow my skills? How can I get better at this so I can, ultimately reach more people and, grow my audience? And it takes a lot of, a lot of discipline. And, Kyle, you mentioned the word like selfishness. And I think I could argue with anybody if we get into a philosophical argument anyway. Everything we do, it has selfishness to it, because I wouldn't help anybody if it made me feel like crap. I help people, it makes me feel good. I want to help people, and I like seeing people get help and everything else. So I think, it's a philosophical argument, but you could argue that everything we do, no matter what it is, has a little bit of selfishness in it. And I think, helping people is not only the most selfless thing you can do, it's also a selfish thing as well.
That's a great point. And it's funny you say go back to work in a kitchen. Chelsea and I met in a kitchen.
Really? Oh gosh.
I still work there, and it was the one place towards the end of my time in prison, my parents and my family would be like, is there anywhere you think you want to work when you get out? And I said, only one restaurant I would go back to is there, because it was the only place I ever worked where the partying scene wasn't going on like every other restaurant I've worked at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very lucky for that environment.
Yeah.
We know that can be a pretty risky environment, but Sean, something you mentioned was how much, I love that, I pay a plumber for their time, but I could learn this on my own. And speaking of that too, you both, I know, spend so much time, putting work into your passions and learning and, better developing your websites, better developing your podcast and your video and audio. And it's amazing to me to see, the dedication, because that truly shows our passions when we create time out of our busy lives to do something that truly brings us joy. Like that is a part of that wholehearted living. And Kyle and I were just talking before the podcast, like, Kyle was spending like 8 hours a day on the computer editing the website. And then I'm reading, Sean, your wonderful interview with Podcast and Business Journal. And it says you spent between 10 to 15 hours putting together one episode.
Originally, yeah, it took me days and days. I mean, I'm still, the greatest thing about learning is the more you learn, the dumber you feel. And like, you really do. It's like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets me excited because, I started in just obviously audio, and now I got into video, and then there's, VFX, and then there's graphic design, and then the trail goes on, and then you get into brand strategy and all that other stuff. I mean, everything is kind of connects and leads to something else. And I think that's fun. I mean, a lot of people are like, this is the biggest difference between before and during my addiction and after. Was I used to, whether it was guitar or something, I would look at somebody who was a lot better than me and be like, I will never be that good. Why bother? And now I look at somebody who's a lot better than me. There's this fire that gets ignited. I can learn this. I can do this. I can figure this out. And that is the biggest difference. And I think finding what you're passionate about, finding that connection, which I think is something that is missing from a lot of rehabs and a lot of treatment providers. Like, what are you passionate about? Especially because there's so many creative people in recovery, so many creative people. And I think if you can find what you really want to do that, no matter what it takes, find a way to do that. Because even if you make only $20,000 a year doing something you love to do, you will be 10 times happier and feel like you're fulfilled, living a fulfilled life, as if you worked in some corporate place making 6 figures a year.
That is so true. What I was thinking too is when you mentioned that you did the first couple episodes of your podcast while still in rehab on leave or on pass, what I was thinking too is like, and you kind of just said it, we had this like fire and this passion in us, but during addiction, first of all, it's like put out and then covered up with all these other time-consuming and energetic things of getting money, stealing, robbing, all the bad stuff that goes into it. So then in recovery, that fire, there's so many people in recovery that have so much knowledge and fire and passion to give. And like seeing you say, we went on our pass from rehab and filmed the first two or recorded the first two, that's incredible, because at that point in time, it's just like the world is a mess. You're trying to rebuild everything. You have no idea what the heck's going on. But there is all this extra energy and fire. I've talked about that with Chelsea, I believe, last time we did a video for recovery. That was, and I'm one of the other things, and you just said it too, that was why I wanted to start all this stuff, is I would get done working at the restaurant during the day and I'd work out, maybe hit a meeting or whatever. But there was still, I had all this, like mental energy that was just not going anywhere. Just be like, so what? I go home and watch Netflix. Like, I love my job, but it's not very mentally stimulating or anything. So finding somewhere to throw that fire and that passion into for somebody in recovery, I think is huge and can help out, fill that void. Because, I've heard a lot of people talk about it. For me, it is 100% true. One of the reasons I did so much drugs and alcohol, is this emptiness, this void that I thought that would fill. And for the very beginning, it did fill it, but that very quickly went away and it stopped working, and I needed more and more and didn't get any effect. But it's just like an incredible way to put your energy and motivation into something.
Yeah. It's amazing that you mentioned that, thinking about that emptiness, and Sean mentions it in his video too, kind of explaining about room 9. But yeah, that emptiness that we feel during active addiction, and sometimes even when we enter recovery too, because, first and foremost, before we help others, we know that we have to get better and get well and fill our cups first before we pour into other people's. And, so oftentimes that feeling of emptiness still kind of happens in early recovery too. I know I definitely felt it, and, just hearing other people's stories, it's, but so when we can eventually, get sober and really start putting in the work, and things do start to change and grow, I think one of the most beautiful gifts and my favorite of recovery has been this ability to really get to know myself, right? Because without substances, without the other humans that we become dependent on, whatever that addiction looks like, without that thing, you almost feel separated. You're like, well, who am I? What is it that I really even like? What is it that lights me up? Because right now it's not much, and that's one of the beautiful gifts over time of recovery as we grow and evolve. It's like getting to discover and create who we want to be. And it's looking deep inside and figuring out what the heck those passions are. Like, what lights you up? What fires you up? What gets you going? What makes you feel that tingly feeling inside that, that is non-substance related, and it's being able to latch onto that and just run with it, which you both have done.
Thank you. Yeah. I will say a little, like, I don't want to say disclaimer. I don't know what the proper word is. For me, at least, to be careful too, because I will get, and I obviously can't speak for Sean, but I feel like I could hear it a little bit being in a similar situation. I could get a little stuck sometimes in learning so many new things and being so excited about putting out a video or reaching these people, this and that time will go by and I put a little bit of other stuff on the back burner because it's so exciting. I have, just like he said, spent 8, 10, 12 hours sitting in front of a computer editing a video. And I'm like, damn, I didn't go to the gym. Damn, I didn't go here. So it's great. Don't get me wrong. But, that would to me also remind me of a little bit of balance, keeping balance of everything and not letting, because I mean, I don't know the exact saying, but you can't help anybody until you help yourself. So if I don't keep myself sober today, I can't help anybody else stay sober, and vice versa. So, that balance is definitely a juggling act, but it's so worth it because you said it all with what makes you tingly inside. To me, that's recovery and dogs. I love them, and that tried to, meld them together. So that was the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah. No, I think I had actually had counselors in my long-term treatment facility saying the B word, because that's what it always comes back to, balance and everything. I mean, it's crucial. I mean, even, when you think of anything, whether it's pride and, confidence, you have to have a balance. You don't want to be prideful, but you have to have confidence in yourself too. Sure. And, and it's just, everything in life requires balance. I think one of my favorite heroes, I'll call him Carl Jung, he talks about that constantly, the yin and yang. Just you have to have that balance in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Very good point. Yeah. I think it's one of those concepts, kind of like the idea of perfectionism, right? Like we know having acceptance that we'll never fully achieve perfect perfectionism or perfect balance, but we still do our best to achieve that so we can continue to thrive and do what it is that we all do best in the different realms that we do that in. So I'm curious, as of what both of your journeys look like today and what you're doing with, Sober Dogs and all the social media and Room 9 podcast, how are you guys keeping that going? Like what kind of work does it take? What kind of hours does that take to continue to put in the work? Is there funding involved? Like, how are you both able to maintain and move forward and grow these beautiful gems that you've both created and started?
So, I decided like the beginning of last year, probably about 6 months after I started the website, that I was gonna go all in for like at least 3 years, and if it didn't build up decent after that, I'd reevaluate. But by doing that, I kind of spent my whole savings, getting everything going, getting equipment, and it has blossomed. I will say I spend every waking moment that I am not at work, some recovery program or the gym doing this stuff. I mean, my 5-minute break at work, I'm checking social media messages and emails and stuff. And then when I get home, it's 4 or 5 hours on the computer and usually another one in the morning. It is an absolute ton of work, but I love doing it. Maybe if I told myself something to stop like a year ago, say maybe don't go to like 10 different social medias at once and do like 3. But I got all excited. We were talking about earlier, like Gary Vaynerchuk, you were talking about him and he's so motivating and, I listen to him too. But it is overwhelming, but so worth it. I've been able to get a little bit of money coming in with Patreon and ads on the website. So that is huge because, I'm not trying to be a millionaire with this, but I just want to cover the expenses and then get something to kind of help or compensate with the time. And that would be great. And if at some point it could be a full-time job would be my ideal goal. But that's how I can keep that going. And then besides that is just time. I'm sure Sean can attest to a ton of time.
No, absolutely. A ton of time, a ton of patience. I mean, 3 years, you go on any successful YouTuber and you go down their videos. I mean, the average is 5 years. Yeah. I mean, for them to get to where they wanted to go. I mean, Chelsea, I don't know how long you've been with Recovery. I don't know if you've been there since the beginning, but I did a podcast with Yana, and I mean, it just takes time. And it's up and down and it's emotional. Should I do this? Am I making a difference? What's the point of this? Oh, wait, somebody just messaged me. They love it. Oh, so I'm helping people. It's like, oh, you go crazy. And you just need to have that, those blinders up and just keep going and trust your gut. And I mean, yeah, it takes so much time, patience. I go with what I would like ideally in the future in 3 to 5 years would be to go around this whole country and find way to get paid to just share people's stories and keep building that website and that database, so somebody can say, I'm struggling with anxiety. Let's hear how other people have struggled with it and what they did to overcome it, or to at least be able to live with it in a healthy way. And, whether it's whether it's addiction, I mean, the list goes on. There's so many things everybody is having a challenge with and trying to overcome. And, that's what I'd like to do. I mean, I was able to get a grant from the New York State Education Department, which was awesome. I had some help from some big CEOs that work at mental health and addiction treatment providers over here in Western New York. And, I had a lot of video projects lined up, and then this wonderful virus happened. So that's kind of on hold. I get paid from one company to do podcasts for them, which is nice when you're able to at least do those remotely. But so I guess before the virus, things were kind of going forward with video projects and stuff like that. And I mean, to me, it's all about storytelling. I think we were drawing it on caves before we could even talk. So I think it's such a crucial part. People learn better through stories. People pay attention. You feel more connected as opposed to doing a lecture or something else. So that's the direction I'm headed in, and would like to continue to go.
Very cool.
Chelsea, can I say something quick?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Sean just reminded me of something that was so awesome too, that I definitely did not do and should have. You mentioned something about a grant from the education system or department. There is so many programs and grants for anybody out there that's like wants to start something. They're in recovery. I just found out I'm on, unfortunately I'm still on parole. But God willing, I'd be off very soon. I just found out that they have like 8 or 9 programs for loans for small businesses and grants and things like that for guys just getting out of jail or prison. And there are so many of those programs, but it's up to us to dig and find them because they don't really advertise them. But there are so many of those, and that's incredible that Sean was able to get a grant, because if anyone out there is like excited or passionate to start whatever, a brick and mortar restaurant or whatever, and you're in recovery, you're out of jail, your mental health, there's so many people willing to help, but we got to dig and find it,
Absolutely. And what it really sounds like it comes down to from the both of you is, number one, carving out the time in your lives, for these passions. And, number two, like putting in the hard work and being patient and persistence. There's a podcast I listen to and talk about frequently. I've turned Kyle on to Ed Milan. There's one that he talks about that I love, that it talks about the echo of our lives. So anytime we make a choice or an action in life, there's always an echo of that. There's always a consequence, and sometimes it's a positive and sometimes it's a negative. And he talks about, this idea of negative consequences and how much quicker we see those. So I think the time frame was like 90 to 120 days of seeing a negative consequence. So if I all of a sudden eat 10 cupcakes later today, I'm not going to immediately see those results tomorrow, but eventually down the road, shortly, I will see those negative consequences. And the interesting part is that he talks about the idea of when we make positive choices and when we put in the effort for positive things, we will reap what we sow, but the time, like the boomerang for that, is just much longer. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 10 years, and it's so hard because we live in this society of, I was just talking about this morning, we live in this society of instant gratification. We want to see everything right now. And when we don't have the patience because things aren't changing quick enough, I think sometimes people are very quick to get discouraged and give up hope and say, well, nothing's changing. Or, like Sean said, well, no one's messaging me. Is anyone even seeing these podcasts? Is anyone even seeing these videos? And I think the thing that I've walked away and learned from in my own journey is I just have to keep putting in the work, keep putting that one foot in front of the other, like keep my head down, stay busy, stay focused, and just trust that those results will show. It just might take a little bit longer for the positive things. And I love that you both, talked about that, sticking it out, that persistence anyways. And so if you were to kind of leave people with, one or two pieces of advice today, if someone's really out there saying, like, I have that fire in me too. I just don't know what to do with it, or I don't know where to get started, or maybe someone's already getting started into, putting their recovery out there in a similar way, or even a different way, like whether it's creating an organization, writing a book, or whatever it is. People want to share that recovery journey that's on their heart, but they're just not sure how to get started or how to keep going. Maybe they've hit a roadblock. What would you want them to hear today? What do you want to leave them with?
So I follow a lot of like business people and motivational people online. Ed Milet, I've turned my whole family onto him, and a lot of like the social media people at least will talk about a ghost town phase in the beginning. And if it's specifically for something like what Sean and I do, I would say be prepared to have this phase in the beginning where nobody watches or says anything. And the only comment or like you might get is your mom. My only view for a couple months on YouTube was my own other YouTube account. So if it's for that specifically, it's just plan on grinding through that phase and it will be so worth it. And then what you just said too would be my other biggest thing for life and recovery in general is that kind of instant gratification. At least I'll speak for me, my recovery was not anything instant, and I'm glad it wasn't, because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. So the emotions, the rebuilding, all of that stuff is going to be a slow process. I tried to fix everything in a week. I'll pay all these loans off. I'll get my job back. I'll move out. Nothing worked. But then I just stopped and I was like, all right, for the next month, I'm going to work on knocking my loans down $400. And then the month after that, I'll worry about getting my job back, or just breaking it into chunks. And slowly I was like, wow, things are working out. But it's hard, time and patience, like all three of us have said today.
Yeah, that's huge, Kyle. I think we have those super like long-term goals, and it's like, why don't we just get up and make our bed today? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think we are in a society, in a country of instant gratification, and nobody, unless you've won the lottery, nobody gets success overnight. It doesn't happen. Success overnight happens after 10 years of very, very hard work. Mm-hmm. and it happens. And there's a quote I love that I always remember. I don't remember who said it, but I heard it many years ago. And it's, the harder I worked, the luckier I got. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if I have not seen that to be true in my life, like I'm, working my butt off every day, 7 days a week. And then somehow I get picked to go talk with Gary Vaynerchuk. Somehow somebody reached out to me and told me how to get a grant. And it's awesome how, life works out like that. And I think work on your relationship with time and work on your relationship with failure. I think those are the two big things. You have to be patient. Wow. And if you learn, I remember when my brother and sister died, people said the dumbest things to me. I was 15 years old, the dumbest things. I just remember them so vividly. And I really learned to tell people when they're going through something extremely unbearable and stupidly painful that don't forget to cry. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. Cry, because that is your friend. That is a tool that takes so much weight off of you. And the second thing is, while you're crying, while you're on the ground, do your best to pick your head up and learn something. And because you can learn so much in your darkness and in your failures, and whether it was your fault that happened or somebody else's, if you pay attention, your biggest growth will come in those moments. And I mean, I think that's it. What else can you say to somebody who's going through a tough time? And that's really about it.
Wow.
That's incredible. Yeah. Chelsea, you said it perfect too. Well, both of you kind of did. Put the blinders on and then one foot in front of the other. Mm-hmm. With anything, recovery, work, just blocking out a lot of the excess and going through it. Because like Sean said, our culture is just excess and instant.
And I think too, that goes for relapse. Like so many people relapse and they get down on themselves and they say, screw it, I'm a failure. Like, no, what did you do? How can you fix it? Get back. Like, I think that, there's certain groups that put such an emphasis on consecutive clean days, and I can't stand that. Like, that has nothing to do with anything. What's important is you're changing your life up. And I had a good buddy recently who slipped up for a week, and I told him, dude, just don't. Who cares? Who cares? What can you learn? What did you do wrong? All right, and we were talking, and he's back on another 7 months. And it's like, who cares? You had a year and a half. Who cares about that 7 days out of everything? Like, but it's so hard because we're conditioned to think, oh, consecutive clean days, that's what I need. And like, screw, who cares? If you slip up, that's fine. Don't let that take you all the way back to the bottom again, because that is not a fun place to be, as we all know.
Yeah, I love that. Sean, thank you so much for pointing that out too. I've, as I've gone through my own training, to become a peer and kind of enter into that realm of things, I've really been learning so much. And one of that is those mindsets of that, when we slip, we don't go back to square one, or as Lori Drescher from Recovery Coach University, there is no square zero. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
And it's just so true. Like, you slip, that's okay. Like, get back up and keep moving. Like, I also struggle with this idea of consecutive days. Well, why not have it be cumulative, right? For those days that I had a slip, I just wasn't, sober for those days, but that does not erase or negate all that time that I built before that. That does not by any means mean that I'm a failure. It does not by any means say that I have to start over. One of our other recovery talks we had a few of our other recovery members had someone else on, and they were talking about, language and stigma, but someone had shared something. It still sticks out in my mind of, if there's a marathon runner running a race and he trips and falls, he doesn't get back up and walk all the way back to the starting line, right? He picks up that and he gets up and he moves forward, so thank you so much for pointing that out. It really is. It's such a beautiful, powerful message of just continuing to persevere. Like, keep your head down, stay laser focused, get those blinders on, block out all the other white noise and all the other crap that goes on that our society builds and tries to distract us with. Like, if you have something that you are so fiery, passionate for, focus on that, stay laser focused on that, because anything can really be accomplished, as Kyle and Sean have both shown in the amazing platforms that they've created, and really getting people's stories out there and sharing what it's like, but you can see that it takes that time and that dedication and that hard work, and we have to be prepared to fail or trip a little bit sometimes, and that's okay, because that's where we grow. When things are moving along in life and it's perfect and great all the time, well, how am I ever going to need to know what I need to improve on if I don't make a mistake or slip up here and there, right? So thank you both so much for joining us today. Such wonderful, amazing, powerful messages. You can find both these guys on all social media. We got Facebook, Instagram. They both have their websites, which we've posted in the Facebook comments. So please check out some of the Room 9 podcasts and some of the videos that Kyle's been putting out. Again, please check out all their social media. There's some really great content on there. Thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you guys for joining us. And as always, if anyone is out there struggling, the biggest thing we always encourage and talk about is reaching out. I'm sure any of these guys would be happy to talk to you. And again, we still have our peer services still happening at Recovery Fitness. So please reach out. Check out our outdoor programming. We are back in action. We've been outside with our outdoor workouts, got some kayaking coming up, some hikes and bike rides, and all the fun things you can imagine. So please follow us and check our calendar on social media. And as well, our big 5K is coming up in September. It's virtual this year. So I hope everyone gets a chance to sign up, and you can run from wherever you are. You can run from Buffalo, Sean. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Kyle and Sean. And we will see you guys later. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.